We all stand on equal ground. We all stand together. That none of us is in this as individuals. We are all in this together. And that's what this campaign is all about. I'd like to get serious for a second. No one understands and appreciates peace more than those who have experienced war firsthand. During my first deployment with the Hawaii Army National Guard, we were deployed to Iraq in 2005, and I served in a medical unit there, where every single day I was confronted and faced with the incredibly high and immeasurable human cost of war. It was from my experience on both of my deployments to the Middle East that really drove home to me personally and to so many who I served with the importance of having a commander-in-chief who has sound judgment, who exercises foresight, and who has a military mindset to know when we should use our American military power, and just as importantly, when not to use that power. So I've talked a little bit about this with different people and shared about this need for the military mindset and why I'm supporting Senator Sanders, and they asked me, do you really think Senator Sanders has a military mindset? Yes, he does. Because having a military mindset is not about walking around trying to look tough, trying to act macho, making threats about dropping bombs and carpet bombing different countries. It's the exact opposite. It's analyzing carefully, objectively, looking at planned courses of action, understanding and having the foresight to look ahead, to see how others will respond to that proposed course of action, and thinking carefully about what those consequences will be before you launch that attack. That's why I'm here, and that's why I'm endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders to be our next commander-in-chief. I'm confident, as are all of you, that Bernie Sanders has the intelligence, he has the foresight, he has the good judgment, and yes, that military mindset necessary to make those most important decisions about war or peace. On the other hand, his opponent in this Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton, has made it clear that in this war that's being waged today in Syria, she favors escalating that illegal, disastrous war to conduct yet another regime change in Syria. We've seen how these wars have turned out in Iraq. We've seen how they've turned out in Libya. We need to stop this path and make sure we don't end up in the same place in Syria. Now, Senator Sanders has made it very clear, time and again, that he will not waste our precious resources and our American lives sending our men and women off into harm's way to conduct these regime change and nation-building wars. Instead, he will use those precious resources, your hard-earned taxpayer dollars, investing in rebuilding our nation here at home. So this is the clear choice that's before us, Miami. We can vote for Hillary Clinton and know that we will continue to spend trillions of dollars on these interventionist regime change wars, or we can vote for Bernie Sanders, end these counterproductive wars, and use these taxpayer dollars to rebuild our nation here at home, because we cannot afford to do both. Early voting has already begun here. March 15th is your final day to exercise your civic duty and responsibility and cast that vote which will impact the future of our nation. I see a beautiful sign there that says, "My first vote ever is for Bernie." So the time is now, Florida. Not tomorrow, the time is now to stand with Senator Bernie Sanders, my choice for our next Commander-in-Chief. Please welcome him to the stage.
That you want to see this country move toward a political revolution. Let me thank Erica Grahowski, Xenia Perez, and Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. And I want to thank Congresswoman Gabbard not only for her willingness to put her life on the line to defend our country in the military, but for her emphasis on understanding how important foreign policy is and that bad foreign policy results in the loss of lives of young Americans in the military and people abroad. And that bad foreign policy ends up costing us trillions of dollars. Now, I just came, just as one example, just came back from Michigan, and I visited Flint, Michigan. All of you know what's going on in Flint? In Flint, Michigan, children are being poisoned by drinking water filled with lead. Now, I don't understand how this country had trillions of dollars to spend on the war in Iraq, but we can't take care of Flint, Michigan. Now, what this campaign is about is doing something very radical. We are telling the American people the truth. And sometimes the truth is not necessarily pleasant. I wish from the bottom of my heart that I could come before you and tell you how great everything is, that there are no problems, but if I did that, I would be lying to you, and you know that I would be lying. So when we as a people is have the courage to face the reality of where we are and have the courage to take on the big money interests whose greed is destroying our economy. So let me tell you several truths that other candidates will not tell you. Number one, and I say this as the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, somebody who has worked hard, will continue to work hard to protect the veterans of our country. Tulsi Gabbard and other veterans have put their lives on the line to defend our way of life, which means our democratic form of government. And I want to tell you right now that our democratic form of government is under severe attack as a result of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Now, what democracy is about, you agree with me and you want to vote for me, great. You disagree with me and you want to vote against me, that's great. That's called democracy. You get a vote, and she gets a vote, we all get one vote. But what is happening now is we're losing this concept of one person, one vote, and what we are seeing is billionaires buying elections. What we are seeing is one family, the Koch brothers, and a few other billionaires. You know the Koch brothers. They and a few of their billionaire friends are prepared to spend $900 million on this election cycle. And their goal is to elect candidates, of course, who will represent the rich and the powerful. When you have a handful of billionaires, a handful, spending more money on a campaign than either the Democratic or Republican parties, that is not democracy, that is oligarchy. Our first fight is to overturn the Citizens United decision. Our fight is to make sure we have one of the highest voter turnouts in the world, not one of the lowest. Our job is to end Republican voter suppression. You got cowardly Republican governors who are working overtime, trying to make it harder for people to participate in the political process. Our job is to make it easier, not harder, to increase the voter turnout. Next Tuesday, here in Florida, let's show the world that democracy is alive and well with a huge voter turnout. Huge! And I'm talking about a huge voter turnout. See, what the wealthy and powerful want, this is really what they want. No one says this. This is the truth. They want young people not to participate in the political process. They want your friends to say, oh, politics, it's all crap, I'm not going to get involved. They want working class people to say, you know what, nobody in Washington cares about me, I'm not going to vote. When you have low voter turnouts, then you have billionaires buying elections, and that is what we have got to overturn. What we have got to show the American people is that when we don't allow the Trumps of the world to divide us up, when we stand together, black and white and Latino, gay and straight, they may have all of the money and all of the power, but you know what we got? You're seeing it here tonight. We have the people. And this is the lesson of history, when people stand together, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. Now, Secretary Hillary Clinton and I have a number of differences. I want to briefly discuss them. One of them, in fact, deals with campaign finance. All right, when you run for president, sadly but truthfully, you got to raise hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, if not even more than that. And when I entered this race, I had to make a decision. Should I do what almost all candidates do and establish This is a very smart audience. You answered my question before I even asked it. But what other candidates do, and the way it's done, unfortunately, in 2016, what you do is you establish a super PAC, you go out to billionaires, you go to mansions, and you leave those mansions with millions and millions of dollars. That money comes from Wall Street, comes from the drug companies, comes from the fossil fuel industry. It comes from the wealthy and the powerful. That is one way you raise money. What Hillary Clinton has done is, in fact, establish several super PACs. She has raised $15 million from Wall Street. And in addition to that, she has given speeches behind closed doors to Wall Street financial institutions like Goldman Sachs. Now, here's the story on that one. She gets paid $225,000 for a speech. Now, that is a lot of money for an hour speech. I think that if you get paid that kind of money for one speech, it must be a brilliant, brilliant speech. And I think if it is such a brilliant speech, you want to share it with the American people. Secretary Clinton has said she is prepared to release her transcripts if other candidates do. I am prepared. Are you all ready? I am prepared to make a dramatic statement right now. You all ready for it? I am prepared to release all of the transcripts of speeches. I am prepared to release all of the transcripts of the speeches I gave to Wall Street. Here they are! Secretary Clinton raises some of her money. We do it in a very different way, and I want to tell you something. This is really important and kind of revolutionary, because if we want to break political dependence on Wall Street and the big money interest, the only way we can do it is to have campaigns funded by the middle class and working families. So when we began this campaign, what we said was something pretty simple but pretty radical. We said to working families all over this country, we know that many of you are hurting, but if you want to support a campaign that is going to take on the billionaire class, that is going to transform our country, we need your help. And you know what happened? Do you know what happened? And this is unbelievable. I never in a million years would have predicted this could have happened. In the last 10 months of our campaign, we have received 5 million individual contributions. That is more individual contributions than any candidate in the history of our country up until this point. Does anybody here know what the average contribution is? That's right. $27. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman Gabbard touched on another important difference between Secretary Clinton and myself. And that is back in 2002. Back in 2002, there was a debate in Congress on what turned out to be the most important foreign policy issue in the modern history of this country. And as all of you remember, President Bush and Vice President Cheney and that whole crew, they thought that it was a good idea to invade Iraq. I listened very, very carefully to their arguments, and I concluded that they were not telling the truth. I voted against the war. Secretary Clinton, who was then in the Senate, heard the same arguments. She voted for the war. And that war turned out to be the worst foreign policy disaster in the modern history of this country. And it gives me no joy to tell you this, but if you go to my website, BernieSanders.com, listen, read what I said back in 2002 about my fears about what would happen, and to a significant degree, what I said was right. Let me touch on another issue, which is obviously important to Florida and all states all over this country. And that is, this is a sharp audience, I can't. You're about 12 seconds ahead of me, all right. I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment and the U.S. Senate Committee. I have talked to scientists all over our country and scientists all over the world. The debate is over. Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity, and climate change is already causing devastating problems in Florida, America, and around the world. And here is what is really scary. If you listen to what the scientists are telling us, what they are saying is if we do not get our act together in a short period of time, by the end of this century, this planet will be 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. And what that means is it means more drought, and we're already seeing drought all over the world. It means more flooding. We are already seeing more flooding. It means for Florida and other coastal communities, it means more rising sea levels. It means, also important to Florida, but the whole world, the increased acidification of the ocean. We are destroying our oceans. It means more international conflict as people all over the world fight over limited natural resources. To my mind, this issue is a no-brainer. And if we consider ourselves to be moral people and to consider the needs of future generations, we have got to move aggressively in taking on the fossil fuel industry. And transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. We have got to lead the world. We can't do it alone. We've got to work with China, Russia, India, other countries around the world. But we know already what has to be done. We have incredible potential with solar panels. Price of solar is going down. Incredible potential with wind. Iowa is already getting 30–40% of its electricity from wind. Texas. We can do incredible things with energy efficiency, making our buildings more energy efficient. We can create a state-of-the-art rail system which takes trucks off the road. Virtually every scientist who studies this issue knows what has to be done. But we're running into something really amazing and incredible. And that is, connects the dots to what I said a moment ago. I want you all to be thinking, how does it happen that there is no Republican candidate for president who will come before you and tell you the simple truth of what I have told you, that climate change is real? And the answer gets back to a corrupt campaign finance system. Because here is the truth, that if a Republican came before you and and said, you know what, I've read the literature, I've talked to the scientists, we got a serious problem, we got to do something about it. On that day, the Koch brothers and the other fossil fuel campaign contributors would say, you are not getting any more money. That is what a corrupt campaign finance system is doing to our country. And I say to those Republicans who are too cowardly to do the right thing, worry about your kids and your grandchildren and the future of this planet rather than your campaign contributions. In this campaign, we are listening to the American people. And what we are hearing from the American people is that workers cannot make it on $8, $9, or $10 an hour. You can do the arithmetic as well as I can. Multiply $10 an hour by 40 hours a week, by 52 weeks a year, you don't have enough money for a person to live in on, let alone a family. I remember I was in Nevada, a young woman, early 30s, came up to me, she said, Bernie, tears rolling down her eyes, she said, look, I've got a 6-year-old, I think, daughter, I make $10.45 an hour and I have student loans, I am scared to death about what happens to my daughter and to me, and this is, in fact, being played out with millions of people. And that is why, in America, we've got to understand that the $7.25 minimum wage in this country is a starvation wage. We're going to raise that minimum wage. We're going to raise that minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. In America, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. End of discussion. This campaign is listening to senior citizens. And what senior citizens and disabled veterans are telling me is they can't make it on $11,000 or $12,000 a year. And this is important, because as a nation, we have to understand that nations are judged not by how many millionaires and billionaires we have, but how we treat the weakest and most vulnerable amongst us. Here in Florida, where you have many seniors, in my state, where we have many seniors and disabled vets, if you look at the cost of prescription drugs, of health care, of keeping your house warm or cool, the truth is nobody can make it on $11,000 or $12,000. You know, what my Republican colleagues in the Senate want to do, and this is almost incomprehensible, what they want to do is cut Social Security benefits. What I want to do is increase Social Security benefits. This campaign is listening to young people. And what young people are telling me is, why does it happen that just because we go to college or graduate school, we are stuck with debt for decades. Just out of curiosity, how many people here are dealing with student debt? I rest my case. I have talked, and I'm sure it is similar in this room, I have talked to people in my own state. Young woman wanted to become a doctor. She went to medical school. She's practicing primary health care for low-income people, exactly the kind of doctors we need. She graduated medical school, $300,000 in debt. Talked to a young dentist in Iowa, graduated dental school, $400,000 in debt. Talked to a young man in Iowa, left college after 2 years, $60,000 in debt. Talked to a guy in Nevada, this is incredible. He's 55 years old, he's been paying off student debt for 25 years, and he's more in debt today than when he started. So here is what this campaign is about, is thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of the status quo. Do not accept status quo, do not accept crazy reality. It is crazy. Everybody tells young people in this country education is important. Everybody says get all of the education that you can. Everybody says that we live in a competitive global economy. We need the best educated workforce possible. Why then are we punishing people for getting an education? Again, what I beg of you and of the American people, take a step back and look at the crazy things that go on in this country. This country today is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Nobody knows it because almost all of the income and wealth is going to the top 1%. Don't tell me that we cannot make public colleges and universities tuition free. Now, my opponents say this is a radical and crazy idea. Tell that to the people in Germany and in Scandinavia already do it. They are smart enough to know that they want the best intellectual capabilities of their people to come to fruit, to become developed. What we want to do in this country is to tell every kid in America. I come from a family, didn't have much money, my parents never went to college, but I want every kid in America who's in the 4th grade or the 6th grade, I want those boys and girls and their parents and teachers to know that if those kids do their schoolwork well, yes, they will get a college education. And for those people who are crushed with student debt, met a young man not so long ago. This guy was paying 53% of his limited income on student debt. I want to give all those people with student debt the opportunity to refinance that debt at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and the establishment, they say, Bernie, you're Santa Claus, all this free stuff. You want to provide free tuition at public colleges, universities. You want to significantly lower student debt. How are you going to pay for that stuff? I'll tell you how we're going to pay for it. All of you know that as a result of the greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior on Wall Street, this country was plunged into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And you know what happened? Congress bailed them out. Hillary Clinton, as senator, helped to bail them out. Well, what I think is that right now we should impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. And if we do that, we raise all of the money we need for free tuition in public colleges and universities. Now, this is, again, thinking outside of what the establishment wants you to think. If this country could bail out crooks on Wall Street, why can't Wall Street help the working families of this country? And here is the simple truth on that issue. Today, a college degree in many respects is the equivalent of what a high school degree was 50, 60 years ago. 50 years ago, you had a high school degree, you know what? You're in pretty good shape. You go out and get a good middle-class job. But today, in many respects, not all, you need a college degree. And I believe that when we talk about public education today, it's just not good enough to talk about first grade through 12th grade. It has got to be public colleges and universities. This campaign is talking to women and listening to women. And this is what women are saying. They're saying, how does it happen that I work in an office or I work in a factory, wherever I work, and I end up making, on average, 79 cents on the dollar compared to men? That's wrong. And I know that every man in this arena will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. There is no rational economic reason why women are paid significantly less than men. It's sexism, and together we're going to end it. Now, one of the things that this campaign is doing, and it's very hard with the media, because the media is not, by and large, terribly interested in the important issues facing our country. But here is an issue media is not particularly concerned about, but millions of young couples are. And I want you to think about this. Again, thinking outside of the status quo and outside of the box. Every person, or I should say at least every psychologist who studies human development knows that the most important years of a human being's life are 0 through 4, right? That is how we are shaped significantly in terms of our intellectual development and our emotional development. And yet, what we have today in our country on millions of young couples. Mom goes to work, dad goes to work, and they cannot find quality childcare. You have God knows how many kids who are 2 or 3. You know what they're doing their day? They're watching stupid television programs. This is unfair to those parents of the children. It is more unfair to the future of America, those kids. I believe that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, yes, we have the resources to have well-trained, well-educated, well-paid educators taking care of our families. And what they are saying, and I agree with, and I want you to think about this again, because we got to overcome this status quo thinking. How does it happen that in this great country, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth? China is 4 times our size. China is a communist, authoritarian country that does not tolerate dissent very well. We've got more people in jail than China, largely, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American. Today, and it's important that everybody understands this, because it is a national disgrace. An African-American male baby born today, if we do not change this, stands a 1 in 4 chance of ending up in jail. Today in America, we have youth unemployment, which is off the charts. 51% of African-American kids between 17 and 20 who graduated high school are unemployed or underemployed. And if you think there is not a connection between that outrageous number and people in jail, you would be wrong. So what we are going to do, going to invest for our young people in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. And the African American community and the Latino community and all of us are tired of seeing videos of unarmed people being killed by police officers. I am a former mayor, Burlington, Vermont. I have worked with police officers. Vast majority of police officers are hardworking, honest, and are trying to do a very, very difficult job. But when a police officer breaks the law like any other public official, he must be held accountable. It is unacceptable that local police departments around our country are heavily militarized and look like occupying armies. We have got to demilitarize local police departments. We have got to make police departments part of the community, not an oppressive force in the community. We have got to make police departments look like the diversity of the communities they are serving. In my state, and I know in Florida, there is a very, very serious problem with opiate addiction, with heroin addiction, and with other forms of substance abuse. We have got to understand that addiction and substance abuse are a health issue, not a criminal issue. We have got to learn and understand that, by and large, the so-called war on drugs has been a failure. Over the last 30 years, millions of Americans have received police records for possessing marijuana. Now, you can argue about the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug right next to heroin. Now, I trust that every person in this room knows that heroin is a killer drug, causing devastating problems in my state and all over this country. Now, whatever you think about marijuana, marijuana is not heroin. And that is why I have legislation in that would take marijuana out of the federal control system. Under our federalist form of government, we have federal, state, and local government. Whether or not marijuana becomes legal is a state issue, but it should not be a federal crime. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. I want to tell you, if I might, a very brief story. In 2008, I believe, I went to a town some of you may know here in Florida, some of you may not. It's called Immokalee, Florida. It's a small town near Naples. And the reason that I went there, because I had learned that undocumented workers were being incredibly exploited. Immokalee is one of the towns where a lot of low-grade tomatoes, the tomatoes used by McDonald's and Burger King, are grown. And I went there, and ironically enough, and I don't know if any of you remember this, this is 2008, on the day that I arrived in Immokalee, front page story is that some contractor there was being charged with slavery. Joel, you know that? I couldn't believe what I was reading. 2008, people are charged with slavery, holding people in involuntary servitude. Well, what we did is I got up too early in the morning, but it's when the tomato people, go to work at 5:30 in the morning, and I saw what they experienced. I saw what these workers experienced, and it was not a pleasant sight. They are underpaid, they were exploited, the housing they lived in was gross, and their working conditions were unacceptable. And what we did is we held a hearing in Washington, D.C. with the committee that I'm on, Senator Ted Kennedy, the late Senator Ted Kennedy. work with me to hold that hearing. To make a very long story short, that with the help of the great organizers who are working and the workers themselves, we significantly improved living conditions and wages for those workers. And what I have learned since in going around the country speaking to the Latino community is that people are frightened and tired of living in the shadows. They are tired and fearful about maybe a relative of theirs being deported or remembered. And what they are asking me, and which I agree with, is we need comprehensive immigration reform. And a path toward citizenship. And let me also say this. People in this country may have honest differences of opinion about a lot of issues, immigration reform and so forth, and I respect that. People have differences of opinion. But in the year 2016, bigotry and hatred is not acceptable. It is beyond comprehension that people like Donald Trump and others are thinking talking about sweeping up millions of people and deporting them. Not going to happen, never will happen, never should. And if Congress does not do its job and pass comprehensive immigration reform, I will use all the powers of the presidency to protect those people. Our job together is to unite families, not to divide families. There is another issue I want to talk to everybody about, and that is, you got Republicans running all over this country talking about family values. And it's important that everybody in this room, in this state, and in this country understand what Republicans mean by family values. I think I'm just going to invite people up here to give my speech. Because you're always 8 seconds ahead of me. And here's what I was going to say. What I was going to say is when Republicans talk about family values, everybody needs to know what they're really saying is that no woman in this arena, in this state, in this country, should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. What Republicans are saying is they want to defund Planned Parenthood. I want to expand. Republicans are saying is that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to get married. I disagree. Now, when you talk about hypocrisy, This issue is a high, now I know I don't shock anybody by suggesting that in politics there's a bit of hypocrisy. But this issue kind of takes the cake in this sense. You got Republicans running around the country, they say, government is awful, it is terrible, we're going to get the government off your backs, we're going to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, we're going to end the EPA, we hate the government, except when a woman has a very personal choice to make, then they love the government. They want state government and the federal government to make that decision for every woman in America. That is hypocrisy. Let me mention to you that I am criticized every day for one thing or another. Mostly it's about thinking too big. Thinking that this country can actually address the major crises that we face. I have apparently more confidence in the American people than many others. Turns out that all over the industrialized world, whether it's the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Holland, Scandinavia, Canada, all over the industrialized world, healthcare is guaranteed to all people. Now, the Affordable Care Act, and I'm on the committee that helped write it, has done some very good things. We have done away with this obscenity of pre-existing conditions. We have provided health insurance to 17 million more Americans. And we have done away with discrimination against women who are paying higher prices for premiums because they're women. But today, 29 million Americans still have no health insurance, and many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments. All right? And in America, we are being ripped off big time by the drug companies. Some of the worst vultures in America. And they charge us by far the highest prices in the world for medicine. In fact, you want to talk about crazy? Here's crazy. Today, 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to fill the prescriptions their doctors are writing. Meanwhile, the top 3 drug companies made $45 billion in profits last year. That's crazy. And then on top of all of that, we spend far more per person on health care than do the people of any other country. 3 times, almost 3 times what the British spend, 50% more than the French, far more than the Canadians. Now, I have been criticized for something. So let me say it as straightforwardly as I possibly can so my critics understand where I am coming from. I believe that health care is a right of all people. And that is why I believe we should move toward a Bernie's a nice guy. He combs his hair ever so beautifully. Occasionally the suit that he wears actually fits him. But despite all of those attributes, he just cannot defeat a Republican in a general election. This is a brilliant audience. I gotta tell you that. So let me tell you what some of the media may not know. That is, in almost all of the national polls, we beat Donald Trump and we beat him. Almost always do better than Secretary Clinton against them. And it's not only national polls, it is statewide polls, battleground polls. To give you an example, just one of many. A poll just came out the other day in Michigan, a battleground state. Secretary Clinton did very well. She was beating him by 16 points. We were beating them by 22 points. In New Hampshire, another battleground poll, we were beating them by 19 points. But it's not just polls. Polls go up and down. But I'll tell you why together, if Trump is their nominee, why we will defeat him. And that is because the American people do not want a president who insults Mexicans and Latin Americans. The American people do not want a president who insults Muslims, one of the largest. Do not want a president who insults women. Who insults African Americans. Remember, please, when you think about Trump, please do not forget that this was the guy who was one of the leaders in this so-called birther effort. You remember that? And that was an intentional effort to try to delegitimize the President of the United States because he was black. Now, it's a funny thing. President Obama's father was born in Kenya. My father was born in Poland. But nobody has asked me for my birth certificate. Maybe it has something to do with the color of my skin. I don't know. We will defeat Mr. Trump because the American people know that coming together trumps divisiveness. The American people know that community, helping each other, supporting each other, trumps selfishness. And most importantly, based on the religious teachings of every major religion on earth, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, whatever, the American people understand that love trumps hatred. People of Florida can play a profoundly important role in transforming our country, in helping to lead this nation toward a political revolution. We have already in this campaign won 8 state caucuses and primaries. And we always do well when the voter turnout is high, and we do poorly when the voter turnout is low. A week from today, let's stand up for a political revolution. Let's be prepared. Let us be prepared to tell the billionaire class they cannot have it all. Come out and vote next Tuesday. Thank you.